All right, everybody, this week, Mark and I get real talking about the former Solomon's Holiday Inn and the plans for a senior living housing complex there. And you don't want to miss it, so check it out.
All right, welcome to Get Real with Chris and Mark. And today we're going to talk about what is going on with the Holiday Inn, the old, formerly Holiday Inn in Solomon's.
Well, there's so many hotels in Solomon's that you can just stay anywhere. I understand they need to tear it down because there's so much room for people to stay.
There's three, I think.
Is there three?
Yeah, there's three. One nobody.
I saw you counting in your
One
head.
Nobody even knows about.
Right.
It was really hard to get.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out three. But you know what? They can drive across the bridge, and we have plenty of places here in St. Mary's County to stay.
First of all, for those that don't know,
yes,
the formerly Holiday Inn in Solomon's has been sitting vacant for some time now. It was a 330-room waterfront hotel with a full marina.
I didn't realize it had the marina there too.
Yeah, actually, waterfront hotel in the southern end of the county. That property currently has a $16 million value, and that is the tax base that it provides. And it's
not providing anything now, but
it's not providing anything. Well, you still got to pay taxes.
Yeah, right.
But if something were to happen or it stayed blighted, then it would be reassessed and the tax valuation would go down. And I think the idea of that building sitting empty,
it's got to be depreciating
It makes Solomon's feel like Detroit,
Yeah, that was a hub for people who stayed down there.
I've stayed there before.
I have too. But it's like all events were held there. And
well, one of the only it was the largest conference space in the entire county.
I believe that.
So there really was no other space that you could go in the county for a conference space.
Well, not a lot of others still out there, and there's not a lot more.
So I'll give you the history as I know it.
Okay.
Right. So essentially, the property was sold to an investor.
Okay.
And the original owner was able to hold back a minority stake in the project, but basically has no say. He's just an equity partner.
Got it.
And when the property was sold, the idea was that the whole
I'm looking it up. I'm pulling up the property. I'm multitasking.
You're gonna fact find me?
Yep, I am.
Okay. So the whole thing was going to be an assisted living facility. So they were
I did hear that.
An assisted living facility. Well, my understanding is that capital markets for assisted living facilities kind of dried up. The funds to be able to access those funds to do that kind of project kind of dried up.
It's also very expensive right now for that kind of money.
Yes, and the numbers essentially just didn't work anymore.
Got it.
So the developer has now taken another crack at it, and this will give people some insight as to how these things actually work. Because I think that, as a citizen, you're just like, oh well, they could just put whatever there. Right. Why don't they put this there?
Right.
Why don't they turn into a Dave and Buster's?
Right.
Or, whatever.
When you follow on social media, everybody's like this. Yeah, you're right.
But people are very disconnected to how things actually work.
I believe that.
These things are based off of demographics. They're based off of studies. They're based off of population studies.
Right. Why don't we have a Whole Foods? Right. Is that
why don't we have a Whole Foods? Yeah. Well, we don't have the demographics.
We don't have it.
Food. And demographics typically run off of 1, 3, 5, or more mile radiuses from the property.
Right, exactly.
So those are kind of how those decisions get made. So for some reason, the assisted living facility no longer worked. So they went back to the drawing boards and said, all right, what can we do with this project? And what has been proposed, or what they've conceptually come up with, is that they're going to keep the original conference center and restaurant, and they're going to renovate those.
Okay.
And in conjunction with that, they're going to renovate a section of a hotel in that area that would end up being a new, fully renovated, high-end, 150-room hotel. So we're going to go from
rooms.
330 rooms currently to 150 rooms.
Which sounds more practical in my world, but for Solomon's.
Well, and that was part of the thing, like a 330-room hotel.
Right.
That's a lot.
I was going to say it couldn't have been booked in Solomon's.
Right.
Very rarely.
It probably wasn't
Tiki bar
fully
opening.
occupied. Yeah, tiki bar opening maybe. So that's one piece. And then the other portion of the hotel, they're going to renovate and create, I think it's 150 units of 55 plus apartments.
So let me first say, I'm if this were to happen, that's a whole other conversation. I'm grateful that someone's taking a new creative look at a property and breaking it down the mixed use or coming up with a new use for that same property. That's pretty cool.
Now, what's interesting, and think about it this way, so you're probably not too far from 55, Chris.
I'm going to give a camera look.
I'm poking at you at this point.
I get it.
But just imagine, so you're 55. You know, a lot of people are downsizing right now.
Right.
You know, the downsizing is a good amount of my business right now. I don't know about you, but
No,
I think that's kind of where the market is.
More than it has been. So
people are capitalizing on their houses, and in a lot of cases, they're not going and buying something else. In a lot of cases, they are renting.
Right.
Now, imagine you're at this age, you're an empty nester, right?
Yeah.
You could get a high-end luxury apartment with a boat slip.
Right.
And you could be free to roam about.
Right.
You wouldn't have to own it. You could just lease it and live there for a few years. You could stay there 20 years, whatever.
Yeah, they're not locked in.
It kind of gives you that flexibility. I think that there's going to be a big market for that. And obviously they do too, and that's why they've designed it like that. So
that's adaptive reuse stuff, right?
Majority of the marina would, essentially be coupled with the apartment space.
Nice.
And then there's a second phase to this thing that out in the parking lot there would be another, I forget the number, I think it's like 70 senior living memory care. So kind of like assisted living.
Nice.
In a second phase at some point potentially out in the parking lot they would build another building with another 70 units that are for long-term memory care assisted type living.
That's needed.
It is needed, yeah. And especially because we have an aging population.
Right, absolutely.
We saw those numbers in the stats on Maryland, actually, that the population is
and aging. I can only imagine Calvert County is
the upper tier of that.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So that's the project. Now, the downfall is that in order to accomplish what works, and this is the most important thing to understand, like, in order for a project to work, the numbers have to work. You have to have the right amount of units in the right location to offset the cost of construction. Like, all of these things work together. Currently in that area, the zoning is 7 units per acre for multifamilies.
Wait. Wasn't this a 330-unit hotel?
Good question. And I feel like you were already primed with that.
I was. I
but
get
when
it.
When you actually do the math of what's there now, there are 40 units per acre.
40.
40. There is no cap on how many hotel rooms that you can have.
Okay.
There's a cap on how many multifamily units you can have.
Got it.
So the reality is when you go from, in this case, they've requested 14 units per acre. We're actually going from 40
to 14. Wow. So it's down zoning.
It's technically down zoning with the 7. But what's interesting about that, and I found it interesting, is that, say that they were looking for another use for this property, right?
Right.
They could short-term rent all the rooms there.
They could.
And it could be like a flop house, basically. People coming in, staying for 2 months at a time, leaving in its current condition if they wanted to, and it'd be perfectly legal, right?
You know what? Look, Calvert County, you got me fired up, Mark.
Yeah.
Calvert County, you need to get your stuffing in gear here and understand. First of all, you've done the traffic studies, you've done the infrastructure studies because you wouldn't have had the damn hotel there in the first place if you didn't, right? So now you're telling me you're downzoning the density, right? You're throwing back the density. This is silly.
Now there's a negative.
And I'm assuming there's a pushback, right? Is that what we're...
Yeah. So
got it.
We have a group of county commissioners who basically ran on the idea that they don't want any growth in Calvert County. They want to stop growth. Pretty much at all expense.
They're doing that here.
That's what it's seeming like they're going to do. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see, right?
We'll see. I mean, hopefully, part of the reason why we're having this conversation is so the public can be educated and understand what's actually happening, right?
We don't
see
it.
The idea of subsidized housing, Section 8 apartments, those things are scary things out there that people get worried about. Oh, we're going to have more crime, or we're going to have this or that, and we don't want more traffic, all these things. But here we're talking about a piece of property that already exists that otherwise would sit vacant. Right. So that's important for everybody to know. So essentially, 7 units to 14 units per acre. The county attorney came out and modified the request to include a couple neighboring zoning districts, so it wouldn't be considered spot zoning.
Okay.
And that was a big uproar. Well, now these neighboring districts would have similar density, and they would be able to do similar things.
Oh, heaven forbid.
Right. Heaven forbid. Oh, there's more 55-plus apartments built in Solomons. Let's all
Which,
freak
by the way,
out.
they're not impacting your school system. They're not,
Yeah.
you're not typically.
Yeah, 55-plus, I mean, they probably have the lowest burden on the taxpayer dollars because, they're not impacting schools.
Right. Not typically the roadways as much.
They're not driving because they're retired.
Right, there's a whole thing there, right.
So the lowest impact that's there. So there's this worry about, affecting these other parcels around, the majority of which are already developed and would not be redeveloped. It was mentioned in the county commissioner meeting, but those could be redeveloped. Well, yeah, they could, but that's not really feasible, And at the end of the day, we're talking about leaving it sit vacant versus getting it redeveloped and having a new, fresh hotel, keeping a conference center space, revitalizing the restaurant.
Not only keeping it, revitalizing it, giving a new life
look,
to it.
New life, right?
Yeah.
Adding the 55-plus apartments, which is a type of housing that we need, right? And adding to the commercial tax base. So let's bring it full circle.
All right.
So right now, that property is valued at $16 million. When this first phase, not including the memory care facility, would be revalued in today's market, it would be revalued at $32 million. Okay, so we're adding to the commercial tax base,
right.
And then the second phase would be like another $20 million.
Well, you also, not just your tax base from that. You have a conference center that's going to maybe be used more often.
Yep.
People are going to use it, and
you got maybe way more actually use it because before it's been so dated. That hotel was built like a really long time ago.
Right.
So the space was kind of dated. Like who wanted to host a wedding or like have some sort of event there? Once it gets revamped, now all of a sudden you've got a fresh new hotel. Well, now maybe we will have more conferences there. Maybe we'll have more events and more balls. Maybe we'll put a rubber duck on the roof.
Right, or whatever, right.
But until we get leadership,
I get it. Not
that has vision.
Right.
Vision for what the future could look like and where we're going to go. I don't think that having 55-plus apartments in a brand new hotel in Solomons is a bad thing. And I also don't think that the majority of the population thinks that it is either. Well, because then, guess what? Then all of a sudden, when you add some additional demographics, we're bringing this full circle. Because now we're adding demographics.
No, right.
Now all of a sudden, maybe this little strip mall in Solomons there gets revitalized.
Right. Maybe you get somebody.
It gets a fresh new look and it gets updated, just like Fox Run Shopping Center in Prince Frederick just did. Right.
Right.
Just like now, there's a few more services in Fox Run Shopping Center, right? Like up in that
area.
area.
And here's the thing:
you've got a brand new Starbucks up there that you see everybody at. And I just want to finish this thought real quick. You got a brand new Starbucks that you see everybody at. You got a Tropical Smoothie that you see everybody at. You got a Mod Pizza, and yes, nobody was super excited about the Popeyes or the Burger King, but guess what? There's still cars going through the drive-thru.
Yep.
Okay, so you got this revitalization that happened in Prince Frederick.
Right.
Do you know why it happened?
I do know why. Why, Mark?
Because there were apartments.
Apartments across the street.
So there were apartments that were just constructed,
and they
early.
generate
and
population,
people
and that
freaked out about the apartments. Everybody thinks that, oh my goodness, there's apartments out here, and now there's people walking on the street. Those apartments have nothing to do with the people walking on the street, just so you know. Right. And by the way, I bumped into a Calvert County sheriff the other day. I said, hey, there's new apartments over there. You guys ever have any trouble over there? He said, we never get any calls over there.
Right.
And then if you went by those apartments, you see who's living there. School teachers, bus drivers, police officers.
Workforce housing.
Workforce housing. The people in the community, and these are market rate apartments, not necessarily subsidized. There is one subsidized project over there, by the way, that's fully subsidized that the county commissioners will mention. But same thing. No issues over there.
No issues, right. And that's the thing. It's like we need to not be afraid. Yeah. They need to not be afraid.
When you're scared of growth and you limit growth, or you do your best to limit growth, you get the shittiest version of growth possible.
Right. You do.
See where we just landed here.
Right. I get it.
But you do. You don't stop it.
Right.
You limit it. You constrict it, and then in turn you get one of the worst Walmarts in the country.
It boils down to being open-minded. Like, and being progressive and try being creative.
You have to have a vision and create a plan, and the plan has to reflect what the community wants. You know, in Calvert County, there was a charrette that was done in 2013 and involved a huge amount of the population, like not a huge amount of the population, but a big group of people that came together, you know, all leaders and thought leaders, to cast a vision of what they wanted Calvert County and
to look like,
and more importantly, the town centers to look like. And it looked like mixed use, housing over retail space. You know, those things require structured parking. Yeah. Those things require more density. I mean, you could get that, but instead of getting that, you're going to get more strip malls because your zoning ordinance is not written to support.
Let me ask you
what
something.
The people actually want.
You want to hear the air sucked out of this room here? Sure. I'm gonna ask you a question. How would you feel if the state took over zoning on locals?
Well, they already did.
What if they took it over completely?
I
see. You know, it's funny. We
would
talk
not
about this.
like that.
No,
because
I get it.
Go back to our last episode.
Right.
Okay. Small towns,
municipalities,
right, can get things done.
They can make things move. You know, state would be even worse.
The more layers that you add, the harder it is to get things done.
I've had this conversation recently, and we've talked a lot about the state overtaking because we have such a housing crisis in the state, and a lot of it's caused by these local zoning ordinances, and it's the not in my backyards,
right.
And some of them also are discriminatory in nature themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And because if you say I don't want someone living there, that someone generally is someone not like you, right? Being real, right? That's generally what happens with that.
Because if they were like you, they'd be living on 5 acres next door to you.
You get it, right? So, and I find it fascinating because everybody here, all they do is complain about somebody else doing something different with their property.
Right.
They all complain about doing something different with their property.
Yet they want the right to do whatever they want.
They want the right to do whatever they want. They want to build a nuclear power plant on their own property.
Right.
Right? But you're worried about 55,
plus
55
apartments.
Plus, right. It's so silly.
It really is. I think the majority of the southern end of the county, the folks in Lusby, Solomons proper, probably aren't that freaked out. I mean, I may be wrong in that
I think you might be right.
I mean, as a resident of the southern end of the county, I would love to see some.
I want to hear what the objections are. What are the reasonable objections to this?
I would love to see some change and some revitalization in the Solomons Town Center there. That's a beautiful place. It is a destination. Again, we go back to tourism.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's just so much opportunity there.
I agree with you.
The first words, that come out of our leadership's mouth are, I'm not letting apartments happen, I ran on the idea that I don't want any of this to happen. Well, you haven't even really necessarily given it any thought yet.
Yeah.
You should probably think about it.
Well, let's just be clear. You're not giving it any thought, period.
Right. And if you took the revenue that just this piece would generate, and then you tack on the revenue that it would generate just from what it brings in, the money that's being spent elsewhere, the events that are being held. So if you took that and you added it up over a couple years, probably, it would equate to those turf fields that everybody's asking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only that. It's not only about the money. Yeah. The standard of living for those people moving in there. You're 100%. Improving the standard of living around Solomons.
One of the county commissioners in the county commissioners meeting said, and this is his whole thing, as well, I don't want these really expensive 55-plus apartments coming in here because that's not going to help anybody. Seniors need help, right? They need a place where they can live when they're on a fixed income. And you know what? I mean, he's not wrong.
No, I get it.
By the way, that's subsidized housing, just so you know.
No, it could be, right? Yeah, you're right.
But on the other side of that, who doesn't want a 55-plus individual that's spending $4,000 a month on an apartment? He said, I don't want people who are spending $4,000 a month on an apartment. Why wouldn't you want that person living in your community?
First of all, that's a really bad thing to say.
That's a crazy statement to make,
it's not nice.
Yeah, I mean,
let's be real. Let's talk about reality.
You got a problem with people that can afford
$4,000 a month, right? That's what I'm saying, right?
I don't get the sentiment here, but look, it's all about stopping growth. It's all about fear-based, and it's about the rural character of Calvert County. Well, listen, the rural character of Calvert County is not going to change.
Well, you know what? I got an idea. Let's tear it all down and put a farm there.
Now that would go right on through.
No problem.
You know?
Let's build a farm here.
And look, I mean, I love the rural character of
No,
Calvert
I get
County.
it.
I love the farms. I love the beauty, but there has to be balance. And
Yeah.
it sucks because when I get into conversations like this, people think that I just want to blow the lid off and build everything.
No, I know you don't.
I'm like, by
and
the
neither
way,
do I. We don't
I
want
can't
that.
sell these 55 plus apartments just
Right.
so you guys
No,
know.
right.
But I will be able to sell the houses around. And when we have folks that come into our area, and quite frankly, in some cases, they look around and they say, WTF is this place?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, where did I land?
Well, look, these kinds
They'll
of places.
at least be able to see something that's a little bit nicer, a little bit more updated, and a place that they want to live. And
I mean, so it creates diversity in a community too, right? Let's be
Yeah.
real. So it just breaks it up. But I guess we're going to sit back and watch this one because
We'll
I think
see
we're
what
going to
happens.
see what happens with them.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I
what
have a
decisions they
feeling
make.
that everything that's occurring right now is the commissioners just posturing.
Yeah.
And they're going to find a way to get it done at the end of the day.
That'd be
but
good.
I just want the community to know and understand, what's actually going on, what you actually voted for. And look, put yourself in the property owner's shoes. If you had an opportunity to do this project that you were really excited about and you were that investor, would you really want somebody standing in your way at every turn? And I'll tell you, that's what it feels like to try to get things done.
Right.
I mean, especially, now these guys are bigger business guys, but especially if
Right,
you're
I
a
get
small
it.
business person.
I get it.
I mean, just the thought, I can't tell you how many builders have told me at this point that they will not buy a piece of property in Calvert
No,
County.
because they're afraid.
They're
not going to be
afraid.
able to do anything with
So
it.
when you look around and you're ready to move out of your starter home in Lusby, and you're like, man, why is there no new construction here?
Right.
Why can't I go buy a big, nice new house?
Right.
Look at the 5 county commissioners that you voted
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I mean, I want to put this out there since we're talking about this. Calvert County Commissioners, we would love to have you come
Love
in
to
here
have
and
you
sit in here.
Yeah.
We would love to have you sit across the table. I'd love to hear more.
I would
like
love to hear more.
I want to know what your story is, and you're all welcome to do it.
What's your side?
We're not.
That's
We won't beat you up too bad.
Maybe.
Well, let's get real. So
It is getting real.
We'll
It
just
is
be
getting
honest
real.
with you. That's
And
all.
I have no problem being put in my place,
Right, no, I get it.
want somebody to sit across. Tell me why I'm wrong,
Yeah.
And tell me why I'm wrong in a way that isn't discriminatory.
I get it.
Put it that way.
So Calvert County Commissioners, you are publicly hereby invited to come on Get Real with Chris and Mark at any time you like. Let me know when, and you're
That's
you're
right.
on. So that'll be fun. But
Yeah.
well, these conversations are good, and we learn more about and I love how you started with this because it was like you want to share, you want people to hear what's happening in your community, what's really going on there,
Yeah.
and then because I don't blame anyone for not knowing. I don't blame them. Because I think the problem is
Everybody's busy.
It just happens.
I'm busy.
And, right.
I just
And
happen to be in a position where I'm in
When
tune
you
with
hear
this
it,
stuff because
I
I
get it.
volunteer with the Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
And by the way, I'm on the Business Advisory Committee, and that's where I hear all these things that come across because somebody comes up and they say, hey, look, I'm having this issue with the county. So, and I am biased because I hear the issues.
Yeah, no, you
I don't
you
hear the
are.
other side.
I get
I
it.
just hear what everybody else is
And-
complaining about.
No, but I think it's important
But-
for people to, hey, maybe it'll spark somebody's interest and they go, well, I'm going to look into that and see what it is. Maybe they don't necessarily show up at a public hearing, but maybe
Well,
they look online
all
and
of
they
a
read
sudden,
the article.
2 years go by, and
Right.
somebody says, man, why is there a bunch of homeless people living in the Holiday Inn?
Right.
When did that happen?
Right.
Because it is kind of tucked back there anyway.
Right.
Like, you'll just realize, that at
Yeah.
some point in time that something's
So
occurred
look,
there.
55 and older housing or a homeless building.
Or an
I didn't even
empty
say a
building.
shelter. I didn't say a shelter.
An empty
A-
building that's
a-
just
a-
sitting there rotting.
A squatter's realm, right? We'll call it something crazy, but
Yeah, and buildings like this, when you have developers that have a lot of money, I mean, they'll let a project go. I
Yeah.
mean, they'll burn
I've seen-
millions of dollars. They'll just let the bank take it, and they'll let it sit there and be a blighted thing. Because at the end of the day, they realize that at some point you have to cut your losses.
right. It's
And what
cheaper.
seems-
It's cheaper to do that.
It's cheaper for them to just write it off and say, "Oh, let it go to foreclosure. We'll
Right,
go do
we're
another
done."
deal." Right.
Yep.
So imagine if that thing turns into a foreclosure that
for
sits there.
for decades.
Yep. And
Anyway.
it would sit there for decades
Decades.
because then who else is going to step into Calvert
Right.
County and want to try to do business there when
co-
they see the last person?
Mark, it's solved. The commissioners are going to come in and they'll buy it, or they'll buy it back and they'll make it a farm. Anyway,
waterfront
farm.
Yeah,
anyway.
and then we'll put all the pesticides and the fertilizers and all that stuff that's used on those farms, and we'll crank it right into.
Well, you know
Creek.
what? I think the state has some locations available for cannabis farms. That might be a perfect location for it.
That would be a good location.
Good location. So
cannabis farm. I think everybody will sign on.
I think they'll sign right up.
All right, let's wrap it up, Chris.
All right.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.